Good evening, fish nerds. Carlos with Bigwig Aquatics, bringing you a video to talk about Walter worms and how to start a culture of these. If you're not familiar with what Walter worms are, they are a very small nematode. They're very similar to micro worms, actually a little bit smaller than micro worms. Great for fry, and actually my adult guppies and swordtails really enjoy these also. An advantage they have over the micro worms, since they are smaller, they'll actually stay up in the water column longer, floating around all through the water column. And if you're not familiar with the advantages that micro worms, Walter worms, banana worms have over brine shrimp, not saying they're a superior food to brine shrimp by any means whatsoever, but one advantage that they have is that these will actually live in the tank for up to 24 hours. Whereas brine shrimp, you're good to get a couple hours out of them before they're dying off, sinking down, fouling your water if you overfeed. Whereas with these will stay alive for up to 24 hours, giving your fish plenty of time to find them, hunt them down, eat them. Great food. Real nutritious, about 50% protein. I think it's technically about 48%. So, great food. And you'll see they're actually crawl up the sides here, so whenever you go to feed these, you just swipe them off, whether with your finger or with whatever you've got to swipe those off, and just rinse that off in the water, and you're good to go. Something else that's real advantageous about these is you don't have to culture these every single day or every 2 days or however often you're doing your brine shrimp. Again, I'm not saying these are a replacement for brine shrimp, but something that's handy about these is you can culture these and get a good month or so out of a culture this size. So some things to know about culturing these: you want a good container. You want it to be tall enough that them coming up the sides that they're not going to get all over the lid. That's going to cause problems if they're getting all over the lid on you. So you don't want that. You want it to be tall enough, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this tall, but you want it tall enough. This is an old deli tub. Things like that work really well. And you want it to have a lid. You want to be able to keep everything else out of the tub. You don't want flies, fruit flies, anything like that getting in there. And of course you're going to want to have plenty of holes in the lid to let oxygen, you gotta have that airflow. And best to just take a pin and punch those holes with a pin or a thumbtack, something like that. That's not going to make too big of a hole for things to be able to get in. And also it helps if you take and press from the inside of the lid out, so that way that keeps the fruit flies from being able to get down in through those holes, having the hole poke up through the lid rather than down through the lid, because you do not want fruit flies to get in here. Fruit flies get in here, lay their eggs in here. Those fruit fly larvae will eat your Walter worms. You don't want that. So to start off with, we need a base for this culture. We need something for them to munch on. So we're starting this one. I'm going to use cornmeal, and it's just regular old cornmeal, nothing special about it. And you want to soak it in enough water to where it gets pasty, soaks the water up. It's still wet, but it's not it's not just some cornmeal floating around in water. It's water that is soaked. The cornmeal that's there, you got a nice pasty consistency. And you want to use water that's either filtered or aged or treated some way. You want to just use a sample of your aquarium water to soak this, and just let it soak long enough to soak into the cornmeal. And then we're going to take some yeast, and what's going to happen is the yeast is going to feed off of the cornmeal, and then the Walter worms are going to feed off the byproducts of that. So we're just going to use a pinch of this yeast. Spread that all in there. And then if you want to use a toothpick or fork or something, whatever you want to mix that in. I'm thinking I might need to add a little more water to this. I think I do. Yeast all mixed in there. And I'm still a little dry. And you don't have to use cornmeal. You can also use oatmeal. You can actually use baby cereal if you wanted to use that. All the same concept. Some type of grain that you can mix with water to get a nice paste that the yeast is going to react with. And you don't want to let the surface of whatever you use get too dry. So if you see it starts to dry up over time, just add a little bit more water to it. It looks like I've added a little too much water. So I'll just add a little bit more cornmeal here. Just one off, even it out. Not bad. Okay, so we've got our yeast mixed into our cornmeal. Only thing that's left, and our worms. So I've got my old culture here, and you'll know it's time to start a new culture or revamp your culture based off of two things. One, that'll stop reproducing as quickly. This has been about 2 days, it might be 3 days now since the last time I fed. Normally it would be up to about here and just about all the way around after that much time. Each female will have about 60 babies per day. So they multiply very quickly. But as the culture begins to age, as there's less food available, things like that, they'll start reproducing more and more slowly. So that's one thing that'll clue you in that, hey, it's about time to restart the culture. Another thing is the smell will start to change. Initially, there's actually a really nice smell, and you can't smell it if you've just got the pinholes and you got the lid on. You can't smell it. But whenever you go to feed, opening that up, you'll actually smell something that's actually, to me, smells really nice. Smells kind of like a fresh bread smell from the yeast reaction. But then once that starts to change and it starts to smell a little bit more sour, then you know it's time to start a new culture. So to get these into here, we're going to start with just all these ones that are on the side here. Just use the spatula and scrape all those off the side. And that's the same as, you know, when we feed these. Just scrape them off the side. And it may take a few days for your batch to initially set up, for them to multiply enough, and get settled in, the new culture to get started before they start climbing up the sides. But once they start climbing up the sides enough for you to swipe some off and feed, that's, you're ready to go ahead and just start with running with what you got. And I don't think I'd be able to show it on the camera, but all over the surface of this, they're swarming all over the surface of this oatmeal. So what I'm going to do is actually scoop some of that off, dip it into there, some more of that. I think I saw it in there. Just kind of mix that all up. And that's pretty much all there is to it, guys. And after, like I said, after a few days, they'll start climbing up the sides, and just swipe them off and dip it into the water, feed them to the fish. Good to go. If you like what I'm doing here, if you like these videos, subscribe to my channel, tell other people about it if you think you've got any friends that would be interested. Hope this is helpful. Any other tips you want me to do videos on, throw that down in the comments section. And thanks for watching, guys.